Well, hi everyone. It has been a while since I have done a random ranty video of me just sitting here talking. But I went out to the movies this last weekend. And it took me a little bit to process what in the world I just watched. But I would like to talk about it. And that movie is the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. It, it was a movie. It was a pretty awful movie in my opinion. Um, I didn't grow up playing Five Nights at Freddy's. I don't have the background of like knowing all of the lore or anything. I have people around me who do, and they did not like the movie either. They think that it kind of goes against all of the previously established lore and does not hold to things very well. So it's a bit disappointing in that aspect for them. For me, I these the first one I did not like either. I thought it was fun. I laughed at it quite a bit, and that was about it. I did not think it was a well put together movie outside of the visuals and stuff. Like story and everything just doesn't make too much sense to me in like a narrative thing. Uh, Same thing with this movie. I really did not understand what the choices are with the story. I thought the character writing was awful, and it just overall was not a good movie. And I think this one was a little bit less fun overall and a bit more distracting with just because of how bad the writing was. I couldn't find myself like laughing and enjoying the movie as much compared to the first one. Except for one little bit, which was pretty funny. But I just have some, it's gonna be a pretty ranty video here. I just have some little bullet point notes in front of me that I wanted to go over. And just kind of bounce around a bit. I will say from here on out, there's probably going to be some spoilers. Not probably, most definitely. So if you are, for some reason, not wanting any spoilers, and you want to go and watch it on your own time, go and do that. And then come back, I guess. I don't know. Your choice. But anyway, starting with my notes, the opening scene is pretty fair. It kind of sets up the whole villain, what's her face, Charlotte, little girl. She's on her own, just kind of hanging out. She's waiting for the marionette to come out because that's her favorite thing, and she wants to see it. And she's like, "Oh, it's my only friend," type thing. She ends up seeing a little boy get taken back by Matthew Lillard's character. I think it was William. Yeah, William, that one. In the big old bunny suit, takes a little boy behind the scenes in the back room area, and she's the only one who sees this. And so Charlotte's like starts going around to some parents and is like, "Hey, there's a kid that's been kidnapped. We should probably go and do something about that." And she asks like three different parents, and all of them give the dumbest, most brain dead response. The first one is like, the guy almost comes off as like actually enraged that this little girl is coming up to him and is like, "Hey, there is someone being kidnapped. You should do something about that." And this guy is just like, "Piss off, like go get your parents. I don't like, who cares?" And to a lesser extent, the other adults that she tries to grab do the exact same thing. Like there's a lady who's just like, she interrupts some lady talking to someone else, and she's like, "Oh, the adults are talking, so shush up and go somewhere else." I don't, I mean, I know that this is set in a different time period that I was not alive in, but what? Like, I don't know a single human being, even complete douchebags, that would respond that way. I really don't understand why they wrote it this way. It is almost like they had footnotes set of like, "Hey, we need parents to get on the bad side of this girl for her motivation of being mean later on." And then they forgot to actually write any of that. It genuinely just felt really odd and just wrong. But yeah, so they go through that. She ends up going behind by herself because, you know, the adults ignored her. And then she goes, tries to save the kid, and she ends up getting stabbed by William on the way out. I thought the rest of that scene was really good. She gets super mad, dies, falls into the marionette. Marionette pops up holding her, and it like sets up like, hey, she's haunting the marionette. Fine, liked all that. At a base level, you can understand the parents being douchey is why she's mad at parents later on in the movie. Just really weak writing to get to that point. Um, the only issue that I had in this scene was, and it happens a lot throughout the movie, is that the animatronics are super loud moving around. They are super big, super clunky, and that makes sense. They should be. They are giant machines. That is it. Except for when they're not. And this was the first instance of it in this opening scene is I keep calling him Matthew Lillard. William, the character, is like washing something in a sink while he's turned around when the girl comes in to try to save the little boy who's unconscious. Um, he is cleaning something. When he is moving around, he's still in the suit outside of the mask. He has the mask off. But when he is in the suit moving around, he makes a ton of noise. And then all of a sudden, he just doesn't make noise anymore. Like for jump scare spooky factor or something. So I don't know if he just like levitated around to get to where he was. I don't understand like how these suits function. Because there are times where they move perfectly silently and seemingly teleport a little bit doing so. And then other times they're loud, clunky, and move super slow. So that's one thing in the movie that I just did not really enjoy. But yeah, moving on in the movie, again, I don't remember everything like super together, so I'm kind of bouncing on notes here. A bunch of the inciting stuff is Abby from the last movie and Mike from the last movie are trying to move on. Abby is still obsessed with the animatronics and wants to like fix them, get her friends back type of thing. And Mike just kind of keeps pushing it off. Abby in this movie is kind of dumb. She does a lot of stuff that is just odd. She is super trusting, and she honestly comes off as younger in this movie than she did in the other movie, even though it's like 3 years older or whatever. So her writing is just really interesting, and she comes off as not super intelligent in this movie whatsoever. After bouncing around and like Abby's sad she doesn't have her friends, some stuff happens. Mike and Vanessa are trying to like build a relationship. Vanessa has super PTSD, and Mike wants to like have her do the dream stuff that he did in the first movie to help out. Bunch of stuff in the middle, kind of building up to going back to animatronics, and then we find out through a scene with like a spooky stories like ghost hunter crew that there is another pizzeria that is open in the same town, and it's the original location. It's not the franchise location. And they're touring there. There's a super spooky security guard who is very obviously not evil. His name is Michael, and this is one thing that has been brought up to me previously, is that this guy here being Michael is who Mike is supposed to be. So there's two Michaels, I guess. But they just kind of wanted to redo one of the Michaels or something. So we have a Mike and a Michael now. I don't know the lore. It's just some stuff I've been told that it just does not fit whatsoever from where everyone thought they'd be going. But yeah, super spooky Michael, ghost tour happens, they're going around, and this was one of the things I did actually like in the movie. Some of the ghost crew goes in, starts poking around, of course they separate, go off on their own, and it's kind of the inciting incident of the animatronics in this new pizzeria are awake and doing things. And the deaths in this scene are actually really cool, and even though this is a PG-13 movie, they did try with some of the deaths, specifically this one here and then one later in the movie, where it was like, God, they did some, like, it was kind of distant so you couldn't see the whole thing, but there was some, like, gore factor and just kind of a cool death. The main one that I liked was the mangled fox dude. killed one of the camera guys or something, and it was just kind of a seemingly cool death. That was the only thing the mangled thing did the entire movie. He grabbed someone, killed him, and dismembered them in like 2 seconds, and then the rest of the movie, he couldn't grab a single thing. There's a scene where Mangled is trying to grab Vanessa through a car, and he just can't. Like, he gets a hold of her multiple times, and his big fat hand just can't grab anything. So yeah. And this Michael guy that led them in there to their deaths and whatnot, you don't see him until the ending, and I genuinely forgot about his character. I don't think they really had a plan for him outside of him being like, ooh, look, it's Michael. I didn't care for his character, which, honestly, he didn't really have a character. But we'll get back to him when I talk about the ending. There's a weird scene where Vanessa is having PTSD. She's in, like, a spin class, and she keeps seeing her dad, like, being like, oh, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna always come back. Stuff like that. It's just an odd scene. It felt a little out of place. And then she, like, runs off, goes to grab her bag, and someone comes in and, like, tries to be like, hey, are you okay? And puts a hand on her shoulder, and she is still actively flipping out. And so she pulls a gun on this guy, and the guy's just like, Vanessa, come on, don't do this. And then she just leaves. Nothing comes from that whatsoever. Her pulling a gun on someone is just dropped, which is kind of crazy. You'd think someone would do something about that, especially if they knew her. The stuff with William and Vanessa, where Vanessa's, like, in the dream stuff, and that's really the only stuff that William's in. They didn't have Matthew Lillard in a lot of this movie. That stuff is pretty good. I enjoyed it. There's a couple of shots that were a little goofy, just, like, looking, but honestly, that whole scene, I did not mind that much. It looked very good. And that's another thing with this movie, is I really like everything visually, the set design and, like, visual effects, the suits, everything like that, I don't have any issues with. I really like the set design, especially comparing it back to the games, because I've seen gameplay of the games. I don't know how you go this long on the internet not seeing any of that, but I have gone back and, like, compared the two, and the sets look amazing. I don't know the names of the people that were working on the sets, but they did a fantastic job. Everything visually in these movies looks like they genuinely took care of it and cared about it and really put their all into it, and I really appreciate that, because there's been some really lame sets and stuff that I've been watching somewhat recently. So seeing people actually put effort into that craft is very cool, and that's probably one of the best things about this movie is the visuals, and the sound design's pretty good too. There's some sounds and stuff, like the soundtrack too. I mean, it kind of fits the Five Nights at Freddy vibe, so all of that I like quite a bit. They did do a pretty goofy scene pretty early on in the movie, where they had a stupid looking Freddy doll in the original pizzeria from the last movie. Where Mike squeezes it and it does the horror meme. That got a good chuckle from everyone in the theater, including me. That was pretty funny. I wasn't expecting them to actually put that in the movie. I made a joke about it going into the movie. I was like, if they do this, it would be funny. Didn't think they would, and they did. So that was a pretty good little moment. And getting on to my last few bits of things here. The puppet being able to possess people and stuff like that seemed really odd to me. That was an odd choice, because it didn't seem like something that should be able to happen. From what I could tell, it was kids possessing the, like, things there. I thought they were gonna do, originally when they did it, I thought it was like, the puppet is gonna be, like, puppeteering and, like, doing that stuff with the person. Not a full-on possession, but that's what it ended up being. And they just got, like, spooky face paint and goofy, glowy eyes. Ended up looking real bad. Did not like any of that stuff, and I feel like the possession angle was very odd. And also, it brought up another issue for me at the ending of the movie. We'll get to that in a second. So one of the main scenes that I really did not like was they get to the second place's security office. It's Mike and Vanessa. They're together. At this point, Mike doesn't really trust Vanessa for stuff because she doesn't tell the truth about a whole lot of stuff and just doesn't bring stuff up. I'll get back to that at the end, too. So while they're in there, the animatronics are out. They're going around and killing some people, they're targeting parents. Like I said earlier, Charlotte, the one who is possessing the marionette, and the marionette is controlling the rest of them. They're not other kids possessing these animatronics. It's just the one kid. She's mad at parents because when she died, she was in a state of anger at the adults. So that's what she stayed in permanently, is how they explain it. Which, sure, that's fine. So she's going around just killing, she's trying to kill all adults, basically. And so these animatronics walk around, find some adults, latch onto them, and start going after them. Very slow scenes overall. When they're, kind of going after people, and a lot of their, attempts at killing people are pretty weak. But while this is going on, and, starting, Mike and Vanessa are in the security office and are, booting up the computer, and they activate the tracking. And they see the animatronics going out. Mike tells Vanessa to go out and track them down, try to stop them from whatever they're doing, while Mike stays in the security office, and he's trying to go through the computers, basically hack in to turn off the animatronics. He's trying, because the marionette can control them through a remote signal. And so that's how Charlotte is controlling the animatronics. With this here, it's really confusing. So this whole scene probably lasts 5 to 10 minutes of him in the security office. And comparing it to the game, it's actually a pretty fun scene. I think the animatronics move really slow. It's like the old suits coming after him. Charlotte noticed that they were starting to track the animatronics outside, so she activates old suits that are in the building, and they clunk around trying to get to him. And that's how you get the security scene where he's oh, there's no door, the vents and stuff. Stuff like that. And that scene's fun. It goes on a little bit long, in my opinion, especially with how they ended it. The scene ends with him being oh no, they're gonna get me, the animatronics are gonna get me. And so he basically opens the Files app on the computer, goes to the security window, and immediately finds the remote signal and just hits the off button. There's no typing in, hacking, there's nothing of that sort. Meaning that he could have done that before he sent Vanessa off to go track down and hunt the other animatronics or whatever she was doing. I think she was actually trying to get to Abby. They could have both just opened the computer and immediately done that, instead of opening up the tracking, seeing where they are, and then Mike continuing to just track them and look at them for a while. They could have just shut them off immediately. So that scene doesn't need to exist. Well, I think overall it is a fun scene, and as far as Five Nights at Freddy's go, it does kind of go back to that, and I think a lot of fans like that of Five Nights at Freddy's will like that scene. It makes no sense, though. They literally could have opened the computer, turned off the remote signal, the other animatronics would have shut down, except for the marionette, because that one still goes around doing things, and then they would have just had to have tracked the marionette and figured that out from there. That entire scene does not make sense to me. But it happened, and they move on doing things, whatever. Continuing on down the way, getting closer to, the marionette had someone possessed, stopped possessing him, that body seemed to die on the marionette or something, or the marionette just felt like not using it anymore. I really don't know. But you see, the ghost hunters in the beginning is one of the people that got possessed first, and they're dead, when Mike is, doing stuff. So, marionette possessing people does kill them in the end. Keep that in mind, because this is another issue I had with the movie. Going to the ending, well, before we get to the ending, Vanessa, crashes her car, fighting some of the things and whatnot, all that. And then a friend of Mike's from the beginning of the movie just, happens to be there and is hey, you need a ride? They just seem to... The characters just seem to appear when they're needed and disappear when they're not. Like Michael, who still, to this point, has not shown up outside of that first scene. So, that's another thing. Characters just happen to be in areas because they can be. It's a little weird. But with the ending of the movie, they end up getting back to the house, and Abby ends up being possessed. Vanessa and Abby have this, like, back and forth, like, run, fight, whole thing. And it ends with Puppet Abby jumping on Vanessa and, like, starting to strangle her. And then Mike coming in with a voice box he got from Henry, who is another big character that probably should have been in this more, gave to her, because that Henry is Charlotte's father. And there's, like, a music box that kept her asleep when, like, the marionette was possessed and all that. So Mike uses the music box, Puppet stops possessing Abby and then scoots around the corner to get out of the way. Mike stops using the music box. He closes it, just kind of puts it off to the side, or I actually don't even know where it went. And then Abby's fine. She is perfectly fine after being possessed, which previously killed an adult. I would imagine that would be harder on a child. She wakes up and, like, makes a joke about something that was earlier in the movie. She's like, oh, it was like that when I threw up that candy. Like, she is fine. There is no side effect of her being possessed. Basically immediately awake. She can move around. She's a little slow and, when Abby got possessed, because the other animatronics are in this final scene. When Abby got possessed a couple minutes previously, for some unknown reason, the marionette possessing a human turns back on the remote signal that was off on the computer bag at the pizzeria. For some reason. Like, they didn't have to go back to the pizzeria and turn it back on and have the last interaction being at the pizzeria, which it totally could have been and probably would have made more sense, because they were like, oh, she's trying to turn this on, we need to go and stop her, we can put her back to sleep. Like, any of that would have made more sense. Instead, we just have it in Mike's house. But anyway, Abby getting possessed turned the signal back on, so the animatronics are here, and they're, like, starting to fight, and then the old animatronics show up, like some, like, Avengers thing. They go pow pow, they beat up the new animatronics in this movie, and then the old animatronics, which were Abby's, like, friends in the first movie and whatnot, they start falling apart because they're like, oh, I'm damaged, we weren't supposed to leave the pizzeria, our systems are shutting down. And then all of a sudden, everyone can just see one of the dead kids that was possessing him, and the dead kid's just, like, talking to him. So they have the power to do that, which is just kind of crazy that they weren't doing any of this before. Also, their whole reason they're there is Mike showed up to the old pizzeria and is like, hey, you guys should help Abby. If not, then oh well. And then they show up at the end. So these animatronics, being possessed by the children from the first movie, help them out, collapse, and then the one that's possessing, I think Chica, I'm not sure, just appears as the kid, like, just as the kid, to the rest of them, and is just talking to them, and gives a warning that's like, be careful, like, basically warning them that William's gonna come back, without actually saying William's name. And Mike is just like, who's gonna come back? 'Cause, like, he's an idiot. Obviously, you should know, because that's the only interaction you've had with these possessed animatronics, was helping them through killing William, and now they're saying he's gonna come back. You should know what that means. But Mike's like, who's gonna come back? And then the kid's gone. So the kid had all the power to do all of this stuff, possess the animatronics that weren't supposed to leave the pizzeria, get them all the way over there, fight the other ones, collapse, appear to them physically, have a conversation, but he just doesn't feel like flat out telling them that it's William that's coming back. So it's going to be this whole surprising thing to them in the next movie. There is going to be a next movie, by the way. Yeah, it's just a really dumb ending. Also, Michael shows back up in this ending, says that he's Vanessa's brother and is William's kid. I think they might name drop another brother. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But he basically shows up and is like, that's our father, and I'm finishing his work. Wahahaha. And then Vanessa's like, no, I'm going to choose my own path, and goes with Mike and whatnot. Michael runs out, gets clotheslined by the friend that drove Vanessa here, and then they just forget about Mike. Like, he escapes because no one watched him after he got clotheslined. That was it. So he's still out there. And then as they're all leaving the house, Mike turns around to Vanessa and is like, "Don't come anywhere near me. I don't want anything to do with you anymore." And Vanessa's like, "What?" And Mike's like, "You lie about everything, you don't tell the truth, and it's getting my family into trouble now." Which honestly, like, looking back on it, kind of fair. Don't really have an issue with that. My main issue is all of these characters are completely brain dead because they didn't actually deal with the puppet. They watched it scoot around away from them, not, like, dealt with entirely. It was just, like, temporary, like, got it out of possessing Abby and then just forgot about it the rest of the scene. The other animatronic fight happened, and then they just don't bother looking for where the marionette was. If they thought it was, like, incapacitated in the other room, they don't check. Nothing happens. And so when after Mike tells Vanessa, like, "Hey, don't follow me. I don't want anything to do with you," Vanessa gets all sad and mad and whatever watching them leave, and then the puppet possesses her because they just forgot about it and left it in the house behind them. What? Like, why would they not double check to see where it is? And I don't know, maybe leave that music box next to it so it stays asleep. Like, I don't understand the thinking of any of these characters. Every character in this movie is completely idiotic in their decision making 90% of the time. This movie would be like 30 minutes if they just used their brain a little bit. And the ending was just infuriating to me because I saw the little puppet scoot around the corner after they got it out of Abby, and I was just like, are we not going to bring that back up? And apparently no, because now Vanessa's possessed by it, and that's going to be the next movie. So I don't know, and maybe Michael's there helping out Charlotte possess Vanessa. I really don't know where they're going with this at this point, and it's just confusing within its own universe at this point. If you get rid of all Five Nights at Freddy's lore and just go about these two movies together, it seems like they tried to backtrack a little bit, adding in another Michael character, and then the two stories of these two movies just are not written well, and things just kind of happen to happen. It's really weird, and I think it's just flat out a bad movie. The audience score last time I checked for this movie on Rotten Tomatoes was like an 80% or something like that. That is insane that we are at the point right now that this movie is getting that good of grades. Man, I'm in finals week if you can't tell. Getting that good of reviews from people. Because literally the only thing to enjoy in this movie is seeing things on screen and being like, I know what that is. I know who that character is. I know what this thing is. Haha, that's cool. That is it. That is the bare minimum. Because this movie, I think the critic score is like a 12% or something like that on Rotten Tomatoes, which I usually don't care about that. I usually go based off of audience score a little bit more. I would be more inclined to believe the critics in this movie. This movie is bad. It is written bad. The characters are written bad, and a lot of it just doesn't make sense. And people are just still gonna eat it up because, I don't know, I guess the horror was pretty funny in the middle. That's really it. That's that and the security scene a little bit, which shouldn't have happened, like I said, were the main things I enjoyed. Outside of that, it's just a bad movie. And I really don't fully understand why it's getting such good reviews on the audience side of things. I've seen a lot of people on YouTube talk about this movie and how bad it is. And it really, like, if you just take yourself out of, like, seeing things that you recognize and thinking is cool, which nothing's wrong with that in movies, but you gotta see there's a bad movie underneath that here. And I feel like no one cares anymore. So that's probably why it's getting the reviews it is. Personally, it's just a bad movie to me. It's just real awful overall. Again, design-wise, looks cool, sounds cool. But yeah, ending was really infuriating to me too. And I know this has been very rambly, a bit longer than I wanted it to be. I just have two more things on this. One more thing that infuriated me and one thing that was a bit disappointing to both me and a lot of people that actually kind of wanted to see, like, more of the lore and whatnot. There was not a single scene, because I know that they had the two, man, I can't remember names to save my life. Matthew Lillard and the other guy from Scream are both in this movie, and it's the first movie they've acted in since Scream. So there's a big thing that people were talking about. They don't have a single interaction, and a lot of people assumed that they were going to be doing the scenes where it was like them creating the pizzeria, because they're the two founders. They don't have a single scene together, and both of them probably have an accumulative screen time of like 8 minutes, maybe, between both of them combined. Like, they are pretty absent from the movie, and I thought they were going to be a big focal point, and I was actually kind of interested in seeing that stuff and getting some backstory in here. I don't know if they're going to do it more in the third movie, because it would seem that they're both probably going to be in the third movie from what I can tell. But, yeah, it was just a bit disappointing there. And then the last thing that kind of bothered me, it's just a little bit of a personal thing that I noticed, and might not even be a big deal if I go back and watch it again. It was, if it is, then hey, I'm right, I guess. I don't know. The pizzeria, the new one in this movie, is seemingly like positioned a little bit more out of town. It seems like in a little overgrown area, so it's like off of a highway somewhere or something that's not really traveled on a bunch or something like that. And it's just been forgotten about, and it sits there. The first time we see the pizzeria, Abby is led to it by Charlotte through a thing that she found at the other pizzeria. When she goes to this one, she leaves at night, rides her bike to it, gets there, pokes around, does some stuff. She has enough time to complete a robotics project with the animatronics there, just like hanging out with them, and then go back to the house, go back to sleep, wake up in the morning, and whatnot. So obviously it didn't take her that long to get to the pizzeria. The next couple of times people are traveling there, it doesn't make sense time-wise. So in one of them, there's a show and tell thing that Abby goes to, and I'm assuming she's dropped off in the morning, or at least, like, noonish. And then Mike's like, I need to go check on something, and that's when Mike talks to Henry. During this whole thing, Abby gets her science thing broken by a completely douchey teacher, and then she gets upset, and so she goes back to the pizzeria to go and talk to Chica and be like, oh, I'm sad, this guy sucks. And she gets there pretty fast. All this is going on while Mike is talking to Henry. And the Mike and Henry conversation seems like it probably, because Mike was planning on going back to the show and tell thing. It seems like it was only supposed to take like an hour to 2 hours max. It feels like less than that to me, honestly. Like within the movie. But while Mike is talking to Henry about it, they discover like the big plot and everything. And so Mike calls the school. Abby's not there. And so Mike is like, oh no, she's probably at the pizzeria. And so Mike goes to the pizzeria. And for some reason, the time it takes Mike to get to the pizzeria, it's like now midnight. It is pitch black outside. So apparently Abby riding her bike to the pizzeria, because keep in mind, she's a child, she can't drive a car. Mike driving a car there as fast as he could was seemingly a lot slower than Abby getting there, because Abby is now back at the school for the show and tell thing with Chica, and is like there for several minutes before Mike like does anything in there. So the pizzeria building seems to move and takes longer to travel to depending on what time of day the movie needs. And that just bothered me a little bit. But yeah, that's really my last little nitpick there. Just something I noticed took me out a little bit. I was kind of confused why it was completely pitch black. I assumed, like, if anything, the sun would, like, start to be setting, and then when Mike gets back to, like, the school or something, which never happened, then it would be dark then, like, if he had to travel back again, but it was just midnight, so. Yeah, really confusing movie. It seems like the storytelling, the writing, and a lot of that just weren't really thought of, and they kind of just had base notes for things and ran with it. So yeah, bad movie, don't like it. Watch it if you want. Tell me I'm wrong if you want. And if you enjoy it, please let me know why. Because that was an odd movie. And I did not like it. But yeah, if you're still here at this point, thank you for watching. I rambled on a lot longer than I thought I would. But yeah, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. And hope you have a fantastic day. And God bless.